Well, in a year that people are saying is a generational election for real change in the city, it seems the only way to do that might be to oust some of the old guard incumbents. But that's a pretty tall order. It's a tough thing to do. People have tried for years and not succeeded. Is this election going to be any different? Can we really make the kind of changes around that council horseshoe that are going to result in a new, better Hamilton? Well, it takes people with some courage to run against some incumbents. And I want to get to know today Alex Wilson. He is a candidate who is running in Ward 13 against incumbent Arlene Vanderbeek, who's been there for a long time. So, Alex, welcome to the Oshow.
Thanks so much, Laura. I'm really excited to be here. And yeah, while I'm facing off, it's me and Arlene on the ballot, I'll say I'm not running against Arlene, I'm running for my community. And I think we can do a lot of good work. And even in the debate, it wasn't about Arlene's has the wrong track record or anything like that, but it was about all the opportunities that are in our community's future and making sure that we have the type of leadership that's going to take those opportunities as they become available and stop. I think Hamilton can fall behind, or a lot of folks look at our city and feel like we're not keeping up. As a younger person, I especially feel that we're not planning for the future. We're not looking ahead. I don't see people talking about at City Hall my future or the future of young folks like me in this city. And so, yeah, I'm really excited, and people have been so responsive to that idea that we can talk about that future. And it's not necessarily a campaign against anything, but it's a campaign for the vibrant, resilient future so many folks in this community are already working to build. And they're just so excited that City Hall might be able to finally partner with them as opposed to being a problem in the process.
Well, I love that positioning because to your point, you're not running against anything, you're running for something. And I think that that's really important as a message, and it defines you as a candidate. I would argue that Arlene, partly because of her attendance at council, but she voted to keep Sewergate from the rest of us 14 times, So to me, that's a record of accountability one could run against. Where are you with that issue? Because it did come up in the debate the other evening.
Yeah, and I think speaking of accountability, I think what was frustrating for me was to kind of hear that side that's going, well, Aidan Johnson voted for it. So therefore, if you think Aidan's okay, like Sewergate's okay, was kind of the assumption. Like I didn't understand the value of throwing other kind of councillors or names in there. Like we understand all of the 2014, 2018 council voted for this. And then all of the 2018 council voted at least once, some of them, multiple times, many of them, a lot of times, Arlene 14 times over those two terms. So I think people are genuinely really frustrated and really angry about this betrayal. And I think what continues to kind of make this worse and what continues to kind of lay it on is the fact that there are so many opportunities to move forward. And that's, I think, what people want to talk about is this massive environmental tragedy has occurred. 24 billion liters of sewage has entered a provincially significant wetland. We in Ward 13 are some of the stewards of the most biodiversity on this side of the Rockies in Canada. When something happens in our backyard, it's not just our backyard, it is the biodiversity hotspot for most of Southern Ontario. So what is our responsibility to not just our neighbors, but in a much more global sense, what is our responsibility to protect this area? And so the fact that we still don't have forward-facing plans, the only reason there's a cleanup happening is because of a Ministry of Environment investigation and lawsuit. Meanwhile, environmentalists, climate activists, young people in this city, myself included, have been organizing for months, asking City Council in part of its climate plan to come up with a commitment to restore 20% of our degraded freshwater ecosystem. So I think it's just this real distinction between where council is at, which is, oh, this wasn't even a scandal, or if it was a scandal, it's not my fault, to where the community is at, which is our water is sick. Evidence shows us that our water is sick. This is just the latest environmental contamination issue in Hamilton. The Welland River, full of PFAS contamination from the 90s. And that's having an ongoing impact today. We have to start cleaning up our messes, and the people who made them will not be the ones cleaning them up.
Wow, what a powerful statement. So the people who made them will not be the ones cleaning them up. I love that because, with the Sewergate scandal, for instance, which I keep bringing up because it has been seen as the one that has had the most public outrage. At least the Hamilton Spectator, I think, got the most letters they've had on a single issue at a single time. I know we were inundated on the Oshow with it. People felt a visceral sense of betrayal at the fact that it's not just that there was maybe malfeasance or just mismanagement of the gate. You didn't tell us so we could protect our children and our animals, right? and our biosphere, our world biosphere. So it's that feeling of, if you screwed up, why didn't you own it and help us make decisions that would have made us safer? And that's something it's hard to get over as a community. It's a breaking of the public trust. But when you say the people who made the messes can't fix them, that's been my real push during this last election cycle, is that it's not just them being mired in mediocrity or not having forward facing plans. It's the fact that they've created collectively so much scandal and expensive problems and lawsuits, and keep sort of circling the wagons and hiding behind this group think. Oh, well, the lawyer told us, and and we all did what the lawyer. And you kind of, I look at it and I say, that thinking got us here. I'd like us to get somewhere better. So I'm with you, Alex. I'm not sure the people who made the messes are going to be the ones capable of cleaning it up. And let me go a little bit further, and you might not feel this way, but I don't think that the people who made a lot of the decisions for the city that have got us in this kind of stagnant place that we are in a lot of ways are equipped to make the kind of decisions to seize opportunities. They like to use words like opportunities, let's go seize them. And I look at them and I say, but do you have a plan for that? Like, what are you doing? Because opportunities don't just drop from the sky, right? So where are you as a younger person looking at council and maybe the mayor's race even, and saying, do we have the kind of leadership around the table or running this election that's going to be able to make the changes that you crave?
Yeah, and I watched your interviews with some of the mayoral candidates, and I know you like specifics. You're looking for metrics that you can kind of evaluate candidates on, and I'm happy to say we have them. And the reason we have them is because the community already put them forward, already delegated to city council. So what our campaign is doing is we're taking those asks from the community. The most successful, most popular decisions that have come from city council this year, freezing the urban boundary, 18,000 residents supported that. That did not start at city council. That started in the community. Protecting the headwaters of the Garner Marsh through Save Our Streams Hamilton. That's some organizing I've more directly been involved in, taking a leadership role on. We won because we had community members showing up, not because council did anything. And then, so when it comes to the Restore Hamilton plan, some of the folks who've been working on these campaigns said, we keep fighting loss. We keep having to say, stop sacrificing, stop sacrificing. What's our positive vision? What should our city actually be doing instead? And so we came up with the Restore Hamilton plan, and we call it a plan that's based on science and built from community engagement. And that's exactly what it is. It talks about the fact that despite the fact that Conservation Authority use doubled during the pandemic, Laura, where was the new Conservation Authority that the city of Hamilton opened this past 4 years? That's something we should be doing with respect to the climate crisis anyway. That's something we need to be doing as part of the Greenbelt plan. We need to be increasing our amount of parkland anyway. Why didn't we take that opportunity and acquire some land and open new conservation areas like they did in Salt Fleet? So the restoration plan talks about specific numbers in terms of how much money spent, and we use it relative to Salt Fleet, for example. We're talking about the fact that we should add 2 Salt Fleet conservation areas a year to the city of Hamilton. That's a huge investment in nature, but it's also a huge investment in building a city that works for the people who live here, that builds a city that addresses some of the long-standing issues we've had with trail overuse that's having now a negative impact on those ecosystems we're trying to protect. So I am really excited. All throughout our plan, we talk about metrics. All throughout our plan, we have those specifics. But I think one of the things that other candidates aren't running on because it came from the community so directly, and I'm so excited, is that Restore Hamilton plan. And I think that's something that's so unique about this campaign, is really putting a nature focus. And just last night, I was talking to someone on the doors. She was 9. She's a Sir William Osler elementary student. And she was saying what would make her community better was the question that was asked. When you look around, what would be better? She said, I want more trees. I need more nature. That's so exciting. And so we're just so grateful that, it is, people are responding to this, and people are.
And it's necessary too. As we are doing this interview, there is a second hurricane bearing down on the US, and we just saw PEI devastated by one a few days ago, and there's another bigger one that's about to hit Florida. Taking care of our environment isn't just about the aesthetic of having trees around, right? It's about building communities that can mitigate some of what's coming. It cannot be about declaring a climate emergency as a council motion and then kind of sitting around and watching as the floods come. We have to. So when you talk about having metrics in your plan, Alex, and you talk about the community receiving that kind of planning, well, how do you as a counselor go in and get these things done as opposed
Yeah.
to just making it sound like you're ready to get stuff done? Like, how do you see moving the city forward from a practical perspective?
Yeah, and I mean, we have to do what is evidence-based. And what's evidence-based is the fact that community engagement gets things done in our city, even when there's just disagreement around city council. Stop sprawl, save our streams, like these are big winning campaigns, but even let's look at the messaging around the police budget and how all of the work done by organizers and activists completely changed the terms of engagement for the debate that so many counselors, so many folks thought they could just go, oh, that person's in favor of defunding, and thought that would be it. They would have won the debate.
Right.
When so many folks were ready to respond and say, hey, this is a nuanced conversation. This is the biggest budget in the city. We need to be having conversations. And what's really ridiculous is the idea that incumbents think they can just kind of go, scary, that person's a scary person, don't vote for them. And that's, acceptable for Hamiltonians, that they don't see through that. So the public has been raising the terms of engagement across, like well before this election started. And that's how we're going to get things done. So what does that specifically look like? That involves doing things in the open, that involves having petitions, having town halls going on. That's work I already do right now. My day job is planning engagement events for a member of provincial parliament. I feel very confident that I have the skills to plan engagement events at a municipal level for a smaller area. So I am so excited about that.
Yeah, no, and so I love the area of engagement. I'm not sure if you saw my interview with Andrea. I think you mentioned you saw the mayor's ones. One of my concerns was I love the engagement as a process. It can't be performative, it has to be legit. But I also feel as though the citizens and residents of Hamilton have been doing the lion's share of the work for so long. So everything you're talking about, and I can name 10 other campaigns that have been citizen driven, blood, sweat, and tears, pushing council, even the vote on the Red Hill. I had to work with others to raise a hue and a cry just to get council to do judicial investigation into people dying, right? So part of me feels like it's great to collaborate. It's great to seek citizen engagement, but don't we need leaders around the table, Alex, who say, I have a vision based on my experience and my passion, and I'm going to push forward with community to get this done. I just don't want it to be, we get a council with a bunch of collaborators and a collaborative mayor, but it's back to all of us again.
Yeah, so I think it's a mix there, because I'll be honest, I think even if we had 16 phenomenal, everyone agrees, they're the most popular, the best people, everyone loves them, we still need the public to be engaged, because what happens 8 years from now, what happens 4 years from now when there's new folks? Like we need a constant civic engagement, and that's something that should be exciting, which is why we need change around City Hall, because so many of the folks there do not support engagement, make it hostile, bully people who are engaging. So we need to change things up for sure. But one of the things you kind of mentioned was where does that leadership go? And I think what a leader is someone where you don't have to be the face of everything. You're building up leadership constantly. So it's not just you. I think one of the things we've seen is this real consolidation of the councillor's role in Ward 13 to be on a lot of not-for-profit boards, be on a lot of industries, be a part of all of these very, very important groups in the community. And I think that's so valuable. But I also worry that, it's been 2 terms, and before that, the councillor was engaged in the office, was engaged in public life, was a town councillor prior to amalgamation. How is it that after 2 terms, there wasn't a successor ready? Like, how is it that there wasn't a new leader ready to go? And so I think the fact that that hasn't happened means that we're not building up leadership. And so your question about who has to do the work, I think everyone has to do the work. We're all in this to build our city. It's clear that the bar is so low for councillors that they've been getting away with not doing a lot for so long, and the public's really filled in. But that doesn't mean the public's going to have to stop getting work done, because we have so much work to do. And one of the things I do right now is with Action 13 is we have that conversation about how can we take climate action, in the way we often talk about at this individual scale. What do you do at your lawn? What do you do at your house? Are you recycling? Are you planting plants? Like, what are you doing there? And making that a community conversation, a community scale. And that's all the most effective governments, local level governments that have been implementing climate change plans across the world have had local collaboration. They're introducing things at a neighborhood scale, and the public's really engaged in it, but they're using their procurement, they're using their resources of the city to facilitate that process and help get people engaged. So I don't see it as one or the other. I see us constantly in partnership over these next 4 years, and that's how we'll get stuff done.
Well, just the fact that you talk about the incalcitrance of some of the councillors and the culture of not listening and, you know, being a figurehead but not really doing, I think, real engagement with the community. Point is well taken. To have leaders in there who really mean engagement when they say it and listen and don't become defensive and angry and all the stuff that and all the bullying, the word you mentioned. You know, I think a lot of people in this community who've been activists, whatever you want to label them, have felt bullied, have felt, you know, this constant, oh, I'm just trying to help my city, like work with this council, right? So I love your optimism in saying even with the best councillors around the table, they're going to have to engage with community. It's got to be real. It's got to be robust. I'm also hearing, though, a lot of passion about climate from you. And I'm wondering, are you a one issue candidate, Alex, or do you have other
Absolutely.
plans?
Absolutely not. I don't know that we'll get the screen, but I think you can see there's lots of points there. And so while the very first one is addressing the climate crisis and protecting our environment, real action is what we're talking about, not the kind of performative action. That's the first, because for me, it stems from everything else. How do we address affordable housing if we're not also addressing the climate crisis? How do we talk about our transit plan if we're not also taking that climate lens? But I think it has to go so much deeper than the lens that we've been talking about. And we need a real plan with real targets and acknowledge the synergies between these portfolios. But yeah, some of those other priorities that are in the platform, sure.
The fact that you just said, can we move past the lens and get to the specifics? That's music to my ears. Because when you look at things through so many lenses, but if we're not moving forward as a city, there's something missing, and it's called an actionable plan. So
well, and I'll say our lens is foggy at best, because in the context of the City of Hamilton climate plan we have, like when I was delegating, I brought up this fact that in the airport employment growth district, we haven't stopped the loss of farmland in our city. In 2015, we said we can pave over all this farmland, 550 acres of it. In 2022, we said, and we're not going to add any new areas to that chopping block. But there's still all that stuff from 2015 still right there. The Garner Marsh that we were talking about earlier, the headwaters of the Ancaster Creek, that's in that area. That's being paved over for warehouses potentially. The community members have fought back not once, not twice, but 3 times. But the reason I kind of bring this up is because the estimated loss, the emissions loss of changing that farmland, those wetlands into warehouses, that wasn't even calculated in our city's climate plan of emissions. So even with this climate lens, there's gaping holes that, you know, activists, folks come from the community, members looking at this in 30 seconds of looking at the plan go, oh, that's missing. Oh, there. Oh, this other city did something else. And it just shows that it's not staff's fault. Staff have been pulled off these things throughout the pandemic. There's not enough of them compared to any other city. So much thanks to Environment Hamilton for doing that dive into how different cities are staffing their climate departments. Hamilton comes up short, and we lost a lot of game during the pandemic when we redeployed staff. We're the only city that did that. So we have a long way to go. But in addition to climate change, because I think that's the backdrop, that's one of the challenges we're facing, why we need new leadership, but what else are we doing? What does a more climate-friendly city look like? Well, it's also an age-friendly city. Well, if you're 8, you're 80, you're in a stroller, you're in a walker, you should be able to get around in our city. That means that our streets have to be cool enough for you to get around. I don't drive. It's, you know, about 1 kilometer from my house to the grocery store. I can do that. That's fine. When I lived in Ward 3 about 5 years ago, it was still 1 kilometer to the grocery store. I can do that. That's fine. But the difference is in Dundas, I'm covered by trees. I can do that walk in the middle of the day in the summer. It's so different than in Ward 13. In Ward 3. So I think that's a huge element there. Like an age-friendly city is also a treed city, but it also has benches so people can sit and can get going. Like a walkable community is only walkable if you can take a break for a lot of people. And so we're not taking that ability lens into play. So we can build that city that also has youth recreation possibilities for young folks, old folks, everyone in between. We need to take action on our housing crisis, build safe and affordable housing, not be afraid of using city resources to make that happen, not being afraid to think about what our city's role is in building public units. Right now, we rely completely on the private sector to get everything done. Tomorrow, how many units are we going to build through the city? Probably 0, none. But 8 years from now, 10 years from now, is that still what we want to be the case? Or do we want to explore what a public sector building competitor could look like? If we have all these units to build, I know Keenan is in it, 10,000 units, more 50,000 units. Yep. Who's going to be building those units is my question. And how many of them is the city of Hamilton going to be putting, you know, local jobs out for tender and helping get those buildings done? Because Vienna, so many other cities that have had success with public housing, the public built that housing.
I feel sometimes as though councillors can scapegoat their own lack of effort on these files by saying, well, look at how great of a job Indwell is doing, or look at how great of a job so-and-so is doing. You know, the private business working with government, great. But I also, this is my bias, I feel like I pay taxes, so the government will do a lot of the heavy lifting. It can't just be offloading to private sector interests. Sometimes maybe a private sector entity can run something better than the city can, and it's not such a loss for the taxpayer. But I feel like it's an evidence-based calculation. Who does it better? What does the mix look like? Keep it competitive. Whatever gets deeply affordable housing done quickly so we can get people off the street in this city
Absolutely.
is a deep-seated priority for me. Where are you with
And we have
deeply
to act
affordable
right.
housing?
You're right. This is a crisis. We have to act right now. And that means using the tools that we have right now. But it also imagines looking at the limitations of the tools we have right now and asking what tools can we bring online for year 3, year 4, maybe
Yeah.
term 2? Like, how can we? Our waste management contract is another great example. In 2021, our waste management contract was cited as a growing pressure on our budget. Well, other cities in the world, like Austin, Texas, for example, is a zero waste city. They're talking about having a waste diversion rate of over 90% by 2040. That's action. And through doing that, their city created they created thousands of jobs and over $1 billion for their local economy. Incredible.
Yep.
Meanwhile, we pay to store waste in a landfill. It's just we could be making some money off of this. We could be bolstering our local economy. Instead, there's a conversation right now about a waste incineration plant in Ward 13. Those details are just coming out, but I can say residents in Greensville who are just hearing about this because they're part of those mandated consultations. There's been no additional consultations. They're just hearing about it this week. And it's a huge local issue that we're all trying to get some more information on right now.
So,
And so a zero waste city is a great example of how we can plan ahead. But
yeah.
yeah.
And now that the pandemic is not better, but I've been vaccinated 4 times, so I've started to travel again, right? And when you go out and travel, as I just came back from Nashville and Atlanta, you can't help but see what other cities are doing. Like there are best practices everywhere. We, it's often frustrated me that council seems to think that the best way forward is what they've always done. No, you don't have to. You don't have to recreate things. You don't have to just rely on past. You can look around, right? Other cities will happily give you their ideas, right? So, we can consult with other cities. Like in Nashville, they have a thing where there's scooters everywhere. They're just everywhere. And you just put your card on, take the scooter, drop it when you're done to help people move through that warm city, to your point about, getting through a city on a hot day. Sometimes there's no shade. You want to just go a little quicker. So there's ideas everywhere. It seems to me, Alex, and I don't know what age you are, but it seems to me you're approaching this opportunity as an opportunity for Hamilton to maybe not necessarily adopt other best practice, but at least to look at them, to at least say, is there fresh eyes to some of these issues, as opposed to rehashing the past?
Well, and I think let's ask ourselves, why is our city so far behind or why? And I think we have to look at a bigger context. There's a culture of denial at City Hall, but is that culture of denial specific to City Hall? No, it plagues every political institution in this country. We just saw like this Friday, National Day for Truth and Reconciliation. We're talking about the graves of Indigenous children found dead, murdered for residential school programs. Denial is a part of our country in many ways, shapes, and forms, and we're beginning to understand how that looks like. So I think there's another reason why we have to look at other examples, is because if we just look at Canadian US examples, we're just looking at car-based societies that have been built in the past couple of years, past few centuries, that are also based in colonialism and on colonialism. And that's not to say there's nothing to learn from North American cities, by no means. But we should also be, if we want to look at, we need to be talking to Indigenous folks around our area. Like we should be consulting with the Haudenosaunee Development Institute, something our city seemingly cannot get their head around. But we also need to be consulting much more broadly about what other examples work outside and across the city. And that's because, as much as we talk about made in Hamilton solutions throughout the plan, we also do need to copy those best practices where they exist, because that's how we learn, that's how we grow, and that's how we break out of some paradigms that maybe we're just beginning to understand that we're locked into. And it sometimes takes new leaders and younger leaders to see those things or to point those out to folks.
Well, I almost feel as though, to use the word paradigm, we're almost in need of a bit of a paradigm shift in this town. And I think there's opportunity. There's been an exodus of, almost half of council, and there are a lot of quality candidates running. And I hadn't met you before this meeting. I'd heard good things, and especially about just how you handled yourself in the debate. And I thought, it's one thing to have a lot of ideas. It's another thing to be able to communicate them, to do the hard work, to execute on them. I know that you had 100 signs put up on sign day. And so are you feeling that you have a real chance at this seat, Alex? I mean, I see everyone says, of course, I wouldn't be running, but do you do you really think that there's an opportunity or an appetite in Dundas and parts of Flamborough for new representation that might be looking at things with a different paradigm?
Absolutely. I think folks are so ready for change, whether it's door knocking out in kind of Freelton, Flamborough, and hearing from folks. Well, I have not met my past three counselors. So yeah, you showed up. You're here.
Right.
Sure. Yeah,
I
I'll
heard
trust
that
you
in
as I go for the,
Ancaster as well. I heard that from
yeah.
Craig Kassar's team in Ancaster. They were going to the doors and people were like, our counselor never visited us. What's going on?
Yeah. So that was a real, when we did some of our more rural canvassing out in kind of Flamborough right by the edge of Cambridge there, that was something we were hearing a lot. When we're in Dundas, we're hearing all the time folks are excited for change. I think people really do, like, we love our community here. We really do, whether it's the nature, whether it's the other people, whether it's our walkable downtown. There's so much to love and so much to be grateful for. But people are worried as well about what the future holds. Right now, we have about 5 empty shops in our downtown. Some of them have been empty for quite some time because the rents are just so high. No one's moving in. People are seeing that, who comes in is more franchises. It's not small local businesses anymore.
But there was
We're
such a rich
seeing,
history. I mean, one of my favorite things about Dundas were all the local shops that
yeah.
were along the strip there. And so, do you have, I mean, it sounds like you've got the bona fides when it comes to environmental and engagement. Do you have them when it comes to supporting local business and quality of life around things like affordability?
Yeah, I think for me, it comes down to where do we put our money? It's not just can you talk the talk? Are you a member of the BIA? Are you on the BIA board? But are you actually doing things that help
Hmm.
business owners? Are you creating opportunities? And one of the things we saw throughout this pandemic that other cities did a really great job of was reinventing outdoor space, whether that was pop-up patios, closing down roads, pedestrianizing side streets. We have one-way, block-long roads in town.
Yeah,
We could reimagine what half of that side, even keeping it as a one way. It doesn't need to be 2 lanes of one way.
right.
Whether that's something as simple as just adding some bike parking, or whether that's a pop-up parkette or something more exciting, I think it's a really great chance to think about how our city could look, and that brings more people out, but it also can create some seating
Well,
for
even that
businesses.
little stretch on Dundas where all those shops are. I mean, I'm just thinking about how much money we spent we didn't plan to in Nashville because these big pedestrian areas, right? And it was so much fun to be there, going from store to band to store to restaurant. Like I didn't see a car, you didn't see a car on some of those streets, and you didn't even think about it. It just felt natural. It felt like a safe, natural place to spend money and build community. A lot of face-to-face interactions when people are not sort of running between traffic and stuff. So it's not to say that Nashville's got it all figured out, but there was certainly a sense when I'm in cities that they have these big pedestrian areas. All the tourists go there. A lot of money gets generated. There's a lot of opportunities
Well,
if we
yeah.
if we look at how we do things just with some fresh eyes, maybe.
Yeah, and I think when it comes to pedestrianization, like right now, folks in town are making their incomes based on drivers. Like that is guaranteed. That is how most of their income is coming in. But that has changed in other commercial streets. That is changing in our commercial street. So again, this is the question: are we going to hold on to the past? Are we going to just say nope, there's no other option, and hope it works out? Or are we going to explore what a just transition looks like? How can we create more pedestrianization, more cycling without negatively impacting? Because if you do the change suddenly, it's not going to work. But if you do it gradually, or you find out the ways, your benchmarks, because we have to also, when I say gradually, I'm not talking about, oh, we'll get it done in a couple of terms. Like when I'm talking about gradual, it's phased in over 4 to 8 years, because we have to have a lot of this stuff done by 2030.
Yeah, no, I get
So
you, and I like that. So you're looking at short, interim, long-term planning, but again,
yeah,
planning, right?
yeah.
Planning with some measurables, like we should be here by then. This can't be a
Well,
kick down the
can
can down
I,
the road forever.
if I could just jump in, I think a great example of a planning is in 2005, folks in town were consulted on a Dundas downtown secondary node plan.
Hmm.
What happened between 2005 and 2018? It's hard to figure out. I've emailed some city staff. But then what happened is right before the 2018 election, over the summer of 2018, the councillor started up a working group to reinvigorate this process. It had 4 meetings, some hand-selected citizens were on it. The report, promising. Again, we have an exciting moment for our downtown. City staff were supposed to report back in Q3, Q4 of 2018. Sorry. Well, for 2 years, nothing happened. Sure, maybe not sure. And then the pandemic hit. And then, so, okay, I can understand we had a change in priorities during the pandemic, but of the nodes that are in the city of Hamilton, Dundas has exceeded its density targets the most. And so this has all happened without that planning. Again, it's community leadership that's got here. And so as we talk about what planning looks like, I think about the Hat Street bike lanes that were just put into town. And that's been such a controversial process for residents because of the lack of consultation that went in about it, maybe a lack of like, here's what it's all gonna look like. Come out to this public engagement session, see it. And it's also different than what the 2005 plan for Hat Street was, which was to add bike lanes, but was to have a treed meridian instead of that lane of on-street parking.
Mhm.
You know, one of the major complaints I hear is about the on-street parking and the safety issues it causes. If that 2005/2018/ongoing planning process was done, or there was more transparency at where it was at, or how it was used, I feel like we could have had that bicycle lane conversation a lot better. People could see that it was part of an other issue, a bigger plan, a bigger change coming to our downtown that also has public space, squares, other maybe exciting features. But if you just see bike lanes and you go, well, I don't bike, you go, there's nothing in it for me. And we see that with the LRT. If we talk about a big plan, multiple investments, people can get excited about one or two of them. But if you just only focus on the one spending item,
But
well, that doesn't
isn't
impact
that
me.
the game? Isn't that the game though? I mean, the game is to say, let's find the wedge issue, to your point earlier, the fear
Mhm.
issue. Let's find the one thing that will say, oh, downtown's getting all the money because they're getting LRT. The rest of us, have no use for this train. Well, actually, it's part of a system of integrated transit. It's like the spine along the, but the point is that nuance or the
Mhm.
why, which is often a nuanced conversation, the why behind these things, it's critical to get by it.
Mhm.
If you're on council and you get a briefing from a lawyer like they did with the Sewergate briefing, or if you're told that you can't reveal certain aspects of a cycling plan because it's in this stage or that stage or whatever stage, how are you, Alex Wilson, not going to fall into that trap of the circling the wagons around council, of not being transparent, of keeping the community guessing, of maybe distorting from the macro to the micro because it's advantageous? I mean, how are we going to know that you are going to do it differently when you get there?
Yeah, I think one of the things for me is that it has to happen in the open. And I think priorities need to be set publicly, because I think that's the issue is right now, all of the consultations we do are exclusively run by city staff, done in public information sessions. I'll say as someone who participates in those, I do not find them particularly useful. I've never once felt heard at the end. I've never been able to get a question answered. I've posed several, but I find more 101 questions are the ones that get asked, whereas like a technical question doesn't come up. Just at council this week, they're talking about the order of delegate status. And I think a really important addition could have been, well, how much of this stuff can we just get done by having information sessions that are actually engagement sessions, as opposed to just, here's what we're doing,
Right.
ask some questions if you want, we won't change our minds. And I
Well, I
think
call
that's
that
how engagement
performative.
needs to
That's not
happen.
engagement. That's just PR. And the city
Yeah, and
can pull
so
that
I
off.
think some of the things we can do differently is this is a community that has had engagement historically. There is a community council that's in town, but right now it's councillor selected. I think we could do a lot of a better job having more of a neighborhood council or building out that engagement. Like the type of structures you build are the type of engagement you have. And so right now we built structures that say, oh, if you're this person, I'd be happy to talk to you. If you're on this committee, I'd be happy to talk to you. Oh, do you not have an adjective or a title that you can go? Maybe not. And so I think what we need to do is to really say, we are having a meeting about bike lanes on this road, or we are having a meeting about safe school commutes, for example. And here's the tool. And I think Safe Streets is a really great way to show off that, because it's also what works. We were talking earlier, but we have to go what's evidence-based.
Yeah.
And so what's evidence-based is, yes, we can do a lot of important road or work on the physical infrastructure of a road. So whether that's narrowing lanes, putting up stop signs, adding speed bumps, changing the speed limit, that's all important stuff. But it doesn't work alone. I live on a street that has a stop sign on every street. It's acceleration brake, acceleration brake, acceleration brake. Stop signs hasn't been enough. But what cities in Portland have done, Los Angeles, these West Coast cities, they've funded placemaking. And they've said residents, in addition to kind of doing traffic safety audits and all that stuff, you also have folks adding little seed libraries or adding little book libraries, adding benches, doing murals on the road, painting things. And it's the fact of you engage the community at the same time you added your stop sign, your 30 kilometers, or whatever your other interventions are, and together you actually have an impact, because you're addressing the safety of the road and the engineering, but you're also building that culture of
Yeah,
safety and
you're
engagement.
building community. I know
Yeah.
that someone from City Exec Dev was going around Europe this summer and posting things like the after dinner walk in Europe, right? Where it's face to face community. They create place, they create space. There's so many great habits that we can, we don't have to adopt other cultures, but we can look at that and say, you know what? Maybe I would go for a walk after dinner if there's a place to sit down and read a book. Maybe I'd meet my neighbors. Maybe then we could work together on our community even better, right? Than being in our houses, kind of in the snow and keeping separate. So I mean, there's a lot of stuff here. It sounds to me, Alex, just in the little time we've had to chat, you're very much a big picture kind of person. And you're looking at how things fit together. So do you think, even though this conversation's been mostly hyper focused on Dundas and Flamborough, the areas that you're running to represent, do you think you can bring that big picture to Hamilton? Because I think one of the issues that's plagued the city is we've had sort of these fiefdoms within our council, as opposed to people saying, this is what's good for the whole city. Maybe not my ward won't benefit the most, but that doesn't mean I have to block it because I can see the bigger view.
Yeah, I've been a Hamiltonian for about a decade. I've lived in wards 1, 2, 3, and now 13. So not the whole city, but a
Ah,
chunk
it's a
of it.
lot. Yeah.
And I really, really do love, like I fell in love 17 at Mac. I was like, this is where I am at. Like, that undergrad, you really fall in love with the city you're in at undergrad. But for me, I knew it was going to last. And I'm still here. I still love to be in Hamilton. And you're right. I think when often we do movement work or we do organizing work, one of the things that we should ask ourselves, what am I bringing to the table? What are my skill sets? And I think I'm a weaver. I see the connections between ideas and people, and I like bringing them together and kind of working on that big picture. We also need folks who are very attentive to detail work. We also need folks who are doing all those other things, but that is a skill set that I do bring to the table. And so, yeah, I get really excited about what we can do across the city. And I think one of the places that I'd like to do that work is on the Conservation Authority. I think that's also what's really exciting is we're seeing councillor candidates tell their constituents which boards they're seeking seats on. I watch Conservation Authority meetings every month. I report back in a public session with Hamilton 350 and other volunteers to the public about what went on at those conservation meetings and what that matters. And as part of a network of volunteers, we watch the other 4 conservation authorities nearby that also have an impact on Hamilton. So we're already doing that system building work. We're already doing that engagement, report back, how are we keeping people informed on what's going on work. And so now the step is, how can we do it not just from outside these institutions, not just by getting 200 people in a room so we can influence a vote, but how can we be in those tables, be around those meetings, so it's not come out and get 200 people to push us in a direction, but come out, get 200 people out to support the direction we're collaboratively working on together.
So I like the weaver analogy. I think it's lovely. I actually haven't heard someone say that before, that they're a weaver. Goodness knows our city could use that kind of weaving, especially post amalgamation with some of what's going on. Last hard question I got to ask you, or people watching this will go nuts, which is area rating. That's the weaver issue of all weaver issues, if ever I've seen one. So where are you with that?
Yeah, so I think before we talk about area rating, we have to understand that when I say area rating, when you say area rating, when someone in Flamborough says area rating, we could be talking about 3 different things. So let's talk about what we're actually talking about, which is having the urban areas of Hamilton get the same level of service and pay the same fare for transit and contribute the same amount. I think we can all support that. That makes sense. We have to increase service levels in areas like Dundas, and that means increasing funding from areas like Dundas, so we're all paying the same amount. But rural residents, when I've been chatting on their doors, knocking on their doors, and we have some reasons to believe why this is such a widespread opinion, strongly believe that they're already contributing to area rated transit, and that if we end area rating, they will only pay more. And so it's been a real pleasure to chat with folks and say, right now on your tax bill, you pay $0 for transit. And if we end area rating, you will continue to pay $0 for transit. If as a separate issue, you would like to have a conversation about what engaging people in rural transit looks like, or expanding our rural transit system in Hamilton, we could have that conversation. I'd be excited to have it. I haven't heard a ton of folks that are excited. I have heard some folks who want rural transit, but by and large, I haven't seen consensus there. But that's not area rating. Area rating is talking about our urban area, the folks who are already contributing to that, and making sure that it's a fair contribution. So absolutely, I'm in favor of equalized transit funding, what folks might call ending area rating. There's 3 options presented to the past term of council. The option I most support would be option 3, but I think we can come up with better options as well. I would love to see an option that doesn't have Dundas residents, for example, subsidizing a tax cut for downtown residents. I think we can just invest in our transit system and elevate everyone to the same level of funding, as opposed to bringing some folks up so other folks can come down. Like, let's just bring everyone up to the same level. So that would also create that money to increase servicing in Dundas, which is, I think, what people want to see before they're ready to put their money out. They want to see what's the plan. And
Well,
so I think that's exciting.
You just wove a nice solution for area rating. So
Yeah.
good job. I want to just make this point. I think it's obvious to our audience, and this is kind of my last point on this with you, Alex, here today, is that you always pivot to the positive. No matter what I've asked you, no matter how I frame the question, you're always answering. Even when you're facing opposition on the doorstep, you call it a pleasure to be able to have the conversation. So I love the optimism, and I saw on Twitter that you posted your smiles for the day. So I need to ask you, where does this sense of like relentless optimism and hope and positivity come from? I'd like to bottle it and sell it for Hamilton. Where does it come from, Alex?
Oh, well, thank you so much, Laura. This is also really great to hear because I'm a firm believer that organizing should be fun. Civic engagement should be fun. I also spend all of my evenings on Zoom meetings, chatting with folks. So I don't know that I live that belief very well, but it's something, it's a tenet I believe very, very strongly, and something I'm constantly working on is how can we make what we're doing more fun? Because that's why people come out. That's why people get engaged, is when something's joyful and fun. And at the end of the day, you look back and go, wow, we did save our farmland, but we also had laughs along the way. We also appreciated local food. You know, some of those pieces are, I think, part of it. So of course, we want people to get engaged with the campaign. We want folks to say, yeah, this represents my values. And we're not going to do that by saying that person's the worst and nothing can get better. We're going to do that by saying our city has challenges in front of us, but we also can get to work making things better. People are already doing that work. It's not hopeless. It's happening every day. What we need is a city council and a city hall that's going to work with us, not against us, in making that happen.
I love it. Well, let me leave it there because you've got me
thank you,
feeling
Laura.
all inspired.
Thank you so much, Laura. And if I could just say, like, we really hope folks listening can check out alexforward13.com. It's Alex, FORWARD 13.com. Sign up for a sign if you're in Ward 13. Help us volunteer. Help bring this home, because there is only 2 people running in Ward 13. So it is a clear choice, change or not change. And so if folks want to be a part of that, we really, really want folks to come out, help make this happen, because then it's our win. It's our community's win. And that's what I think we're seeing across the city, is it's not individual candidates as much as they are leaders across the city, but it's our community coming forward and saying, we want a seat at the table. We want to be at City Hall. Here are representatives that are going to do that for us.
I hope everybody gets out and votes, whether you're voting for Alex or the person that he is running against. Your vote still has to happen, Hamilton. I think one of the things that we want to do here on the Oshow is make sure that there's more engagement. We have to get that participation level up. It's our community. We're all fighting for it, maybe in different ways, but the best way that we can work together is by getting out there and voting for people who we believe share our vision and want to make the city better. And if you missed the interview with Andrea Horvath or with the 2 that we've done with Keenan, or any of the other council candidates that we've been talking to who are running, you can always check those out on YouTube or subscribe, and you'll get notices of new shows, but they're up there for you to look at and to really get informed and engaged. But get out and vote no matter what. Thank you so much for watching the Oshow, and thank you, Alex, for being on.
Thanks, Laura. And if folks want to get in touch with us, we're having our campaign office opening this Saturday. Details will be on our socials and on our website. So yeah, be sure to check those out, and we hope to see you this Saturday. Thanks so much, Laura.
Something tells me it's going to be a fun office opening. I'm just getting that vibe.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Thank you.
Good luck. Congratulations. Take care.